Hey everybody, welcome to the Smoothie channel. I am SB Conrad, and this is the second video in the Elden Ring Jumpstart Guide. Unlike the first video in the Jumpstart Guide, this one is for newcomers as well as anybody who just wants to learn more about how damage is influenced by the different ways that you can attack in Elden Ring. There is one thing I want to mention just to get it out of the way real quick, and that is that you can block when you're two-handing your weapon. So obviously using a shield is going to negate the most amount of damage. Not blocking with anything means you're going to take all of the damage. But it seems like people either don't know or don't remember that you can also block with your weapon when you're two-handing it. Remember that some damage negation is better than none. Now onto the more exciting stuff. So damage varies depending on the type of attack. If you don't include critical attacks, there are between 6 and 10 different types of attacks, depending on how you want to look at it. At the very least, you have light attacks, where you just hit R1, strong attacks, where you just hit R2, charged strong attacks, where you hold R2, jumping attacks, where you jump and attack, sprinting attacks, which are attacks you either make while holding down the sprint button or just after releasing it. Then there are stealth attacks. For anyone who doesn't know, there is a stealth mechanic in Elden Ring. If you attack an enemy who is not alerted to you, you deal more damage to that enemy regardless of how you attack them. So, for example, if you sneak up on an enemy and you hit R1, it will do more damage than if you walked right up to that enemy face to face and hit R1. Okay, so that makes 6 ways of attacking. So how do you get from there to 10? So you deal different amounts of damage when you jump and perform a light attack, and when you jump and perform a strong attack. And the same is true for light and strong attacks when it comes to sprinting and stealthy attacks. So we had 6, and that would add 1 more jumping attack, 1 more sprinting attack, and 1 more stealthy attack, which puts us up to 9 total attacks that all vary in how much damage they deal. If you perform a charged attack while utilizing the stealth mechanic, the damage output is different from when you use a charged attack against an enemy who knows you're there. So that gives us 10 total attacks that all deal different amounts of damage. And really, it's 20 total attacks because the damage varies again depending on if you are one-handing or two-handing your weapon for all 10 of those moves. I realize that's a ton of numbers, so I'll put a link to a Google Spreadsheet in the description for this video for anyone who wants to see the difference in damage among these 20 attacks. I have only recorded complete numbers for the club so far, but I am planning on doing testing with more weapons in the future. So then there are also 2 types of critical attacks in the game, backstabbing and riposting. Both types of critical hits will initiate an animation, and you are invincible for the duration of this animation. If you aren't moving and you hit R1 when you are directly behind an enemy, you will enter the backstab animation. This works even if you have not snuck up on the enemy. In fact, there are quite a few enemies in the game who you can backstab simply by walking either clockwise or counterclockwise around them. You never have to block or dodge anything. You can literally just walk around them until their back is exposed to you and then hit R1. Then there are 2 ways to perform a riposte, through either breaking the stance of your enemy or by parrying them with a shield that is equipped with the parry skill. The game alerts you when you have a chance for a riposte through a special noise. Every enemy, including most of the bosses in the game, has an invisible amount of poise and requires a different amount of damage in order to be stance broken. Some enemies will take more damage for different types of attacks too, like being more vulnerable to frost or fire damage. The critical hit rating on weapons is the stat that determines how much damage to add to a weapon's backstab and riposte. Some weapons have a higher critical rating than others. Disregarding weapon upgrades, a club, for instance, is always going to deal more damage than, say, a dagger when it comes to all the light and strong attacks. But the dagger's 130 critical hit rating versus the club's at 100 means the dagger will always deal more damage than the club when it comes to backstabbing and riposting. So there were a few things I discovered through testing the different ways you can attack when it comes to how much damage you do. So sprinting light attacks do more damage than regular light attacks, but sprinting strong attacks actually do less damage than the regular strong attacks. I tested this with 3 different weapons, and so far it's been true for each of them. Jumping attacks always do more damage than both regular and sprinting attacks regardless. I think most people have probably realized this by now, but depending on the critical hit rating of the weapon, a stealthy charged attack does more damage than a backstab. For example, the club's 2-handed charged attack from stealth does 40 more points of damage than its backstab does. What people might not know is that a backstab performed from stealth actually does more damage than a backstab against an alerted enemy. So for the club, this was only a difference of 6 points of damage, but for the dagger, the difference was much larger. If the enemy knows you're there and you simply circle around them, the dagger does 288 points of backstab damage. If the enemy is unaware of your presence, the dagger backstabs for 356 points of damage. So that's 68 points that separate the two. I assume the scaling has to do with the critical hit rating, but I'll have to do more testing with more weapons in the future to know for sure. Backstabs and riposts do the same amount of damage whether you are one-handing or two-handing your weapon. You can parry multiple enemies at a time. Apparently this is also true in the Dark Souls series, which I'm not sure if I knew that or not, but either way, I was pretty stoked when I double parried the Skeleton Bros. Riposte damage is the same for both stance breaks and for parrying. At least for the club and the dagger, and it seems for most weapons, riposting does more damage than any other attack. Whether or not this is true for all the weapons in the game though, I'm not sure. I am planning on testing more weapons in the future, but since this video is still part of a series directed at newer players, I didn't want to confuse anyone. I hope this video helped, and if it didn't, then thanks for watching it anyway, and who knows, maybe you'll learn something in the next one.